Hello, my fellow devils. This is your Devil Crypto News host, Coyote, and welcome back to the Devil Crypto News. This news show is where we talk about crypto, NFTs, personal finance, and more. And today we're going to be talking about Elon Musk, Twitter, Sony and the metaverse, and JP Morgan Chase having their worst quarter since the pandemic. So with that, let's jump into it. I'm joined today, as always, by Old Scratch. Old Scratch, what do you have going on today?
Not much is going on, man. I've been following the Twitter and Elon fiasco that's been going down. Do you know much about what's going on?
Yeah, I probably know as much as the layperson who's like looking at updates on Twitter, maybe getting some status updates, the biggest highlights, but I haven't dove super deep into it. What can you tell me?
Well, in case anyone who's been following or somehow doesn't know what's going on, Elon Musk became Twitter's largest shareholder recently at 9% of the shares, and he was going to join the board of directors of Twitter. And it was like a said for sure thing. And the day he was supposed to join, Twitter and announced that he wasn't joining all of a sudden. If the kind of a passive aggressive tweet saying like, hey, like, our vision's not going to change, even with, essentially just, it was a very formal, I'd say, disagreement about how he's not going to join.
Yeah, I mean, one of those things because as soon as he does something, everybody else follows suit. So just like me and others, we see Elon Musk does something on Twitter. Guess what? We want to all do the same thing, or a lot of people do. So yeah, he knows he's a smart guy and he's a very influential person in the finance and crypto world.
And being the largest shareholder means, obviously that he has some sort of control on where the direction of the company goes because he holds this huge amount of equity. But this is where it gets really interesting. So he's not now on the board all of a sudden. He then comes in with a buy offer for Twitter, raising the price to from $46 currently to like $54 a share. It's like totaling at like maybe 43 billion, something like that. But he basically says, I want to buy the whole company. And very formally says, if I don't get the company, if you don't appease my demands, I'm going to dump the stock. He essentially said that in a very formal way. And so it's getting crazy now.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like you said, Twitter basically said, "Hey, we're not going to change our vision because of someone buying stuff." But you know, you have to appease your shareholders. Like that's what happens. And if not, people that have money like Elon, they can jump in and say, "Well, hey, now I'm going to try to take the company or do what I want." So it's really just an interesting dynamic there.
Anyway, what became really interesting though is that the investment company Vanguard then came in and bought like 10.2% shares worth of Twitter, becoming the largest shareholder over Elon. Now Elon's number two. And so I don't know if this is like a Julius Caesar, Mark Antony situation where Vanguard has kind of their own agenda, or if they are doing this on behalf of Twitter. It's really interesting to see this go down. But that's where I thought the story was going to end, at least for now. And then something literally, as we're recording, just happened. So I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, do you have thoughts on this takeover so far?
Oh, absolutely. It's so funny. It reminds me of one of my favorite movies, Dark Knight, right? Where basically Bruce Wayne says, I've just become like the largest shareholder in the company that you tried to fire me for, this or that. And remember when he took back the Wayne Enterprises when they tried to push him out? It's like money talks. And if you're a one rich person, you can make a lot of things happen. So yeah, it's so interesting. And Elon Musk is the closest thing we have to like a Bruce Wayne or an Iron Man, Tony Stark in in the real world, I feel like.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. You say Tony Stark, because literally, like, I want to say like a week ago, 5 days ago, Tony Stark was trending on Twitter, and like people were posting memes of Elon saying he's like the real life Tony Stark. But anyway, where this becomes really interesting is okay. So this Vanguard move isn't even the final move. Twitter, I guess, implemented a poison pill strategy, which I didn't know what that was, but essentially, from what I understand, is that it's kind of like an inflation of the stock a bit where you make more shares available just to minimize the piece that Elon can acquire. So it kind of devalues from what I understand Twitter, and it is called poison pill for a reason because it's like poison, right? It's a defense mechanism against people like Elon for large buyouts.
Yeah, but doesn't that just to kind of dilute the shares to begin with, though? So I mean, who does that actually benefit besides playing defense? That's a little bit. It's an interesting strategy.
Well, you said it yourself. It's exactly that. It's playing defense. Twitter's completely on the defense from this, obviously, because they don't want one guy taking over everything.
Yeah, and I mean, like, can you really? I can't really blame Twitter either. I mean, if I have a company, everything's going along well. I don't want Elon Musk or anyone else. Like, I don't necessarily want someone coming in and taking over like that or trying to. So I kind of get both sides of it. But yeah, Elon. One thing you'd say about him, he is very newsworthy. He's buzzworthy, and he's gonna make sure the billboards have his name in some way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. What's interesting that some people are saying that if he doesn't get Twitter, that he then might go and do this to like a CNN or to CNN. I mean, right now CNN's actually not doing super well, and they put a lot of money into CNN Plus, whatever the streaming service is, and it was a pretty massive financial disaster. So if somehow this Twitter thing gets stopped, he could acquire a huge chunk of CNN too, where he can kind of influence his own, for whatever reason, his own kind of message there. And of course, like it's kind of cheap for the taking, I would say, right now. But I'm curious. So if he doesn't get Twitter, do you think he'll do something like that? If not, what do you think he'll do? And if he does get Twitter, do you think that this will benefit crypto? And like, how can you see this a benefit for crypto on Twitter?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, one thing I will say is that there seems to always be a method to his madness in almost everything he does, right? So I'm sure he has a plan in place and a backup plan, like continuity plans on top of continuity plans. But if he does get Twitter, then obviously, he's an influential person. He's going to be able to share a lot of, or maybe introduce a lot of things that Twitter doesn't currently have or support as much. That would be maybe more pro crypto. I could definitely see that happening. Or who knows? Like you said, if he goes and purchases CNN or any other type of media source and streaming platform or news outlet, then he can kind of create what he will with it. So Twitter, obviously popular, younger folks use it. There's a lot of people in our generation and others that use it. Versus maybe CNN is not as widely spread to that, and I think we'd probably see a shift. Like there's so many things that can happen, but again, I would put my money on Elon kind of knowing what he's doing. And even if plan A doesn't work, having a pretty strong plan B.
Yeah, certainly, I think. And, one thing I think, and I'm not the first to say this, obviously, but I think this move also was a bit of an insurance policy for him because Twitter obviously has, and I'm not going to get into political opinions, obviously, but Twitter has a bad reputation with censorship. Whether you agree with it or not isn't the issue. It's just the reputation that they hold regarding censorship is a negative one. Obviously, the most controversial example is when the former president was removed from Twitter. Um, so some people think, and myself included, him buying and becoming the biggest shareholder kind of ensures the fact that he ain't going to get censored or removed anytime soon because he's always kind of in the news for saying something that makes people upset or just sort of trolling.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, how could he get removed or banned if he's, such a large majority, close majority owner? It's curious. I hadn't thought about it that way. That's a really good perspective. I don't know if that's necessarily what he's thinking, but yeah, it could protect against that. Or, maybe there is certain things he's afraid of, but you're right. I mean, how are you going to ban or censor someone that potentially is a partial owner? But playing devil's advocate to that, I remember I'm a huge basketball fan, and Donald Sterling was the owner of the Clippers. I'm actually a Clippers fan, for better or for worse, and he was the owner for them, for a long time. And the NBA basically, because of some stuff that he said and did, removed him from that position, and he was the owner of the team. So I don't know. I wouldn't put it past like whatever company is doing whatever. Like at the end of the day, they can kind of do whatever they want. It could be him playing a little bit of defense, but it'd be interesting to see what Twitter does in response to this as it relates to him as an individual user or contributor. Cool. Another thing we were going to talk about today is you mentioned that Sony, they invested $1 billion into Epic Games, and they were building their sort of a metaverse. And I'm a huge fan of the metaverse, of everything related to it. And I think getting a big player like Sony investing that much money, I mean, I think a lot of companies have already started doing that, are going to follow suit. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, so the metaverse stuff is really fascinating to me. I've been a crypto nut for a while, and so I'm still like a bit new to the metaverse. I mean, keep in mind, I'm not the tech dev on the Devil crypto project, of course, but our partner and dev, and one of our founders, Diabolus, is a video game developer that works in Unreal Engine. And he has explored, using the Devil entity in games, of course, but also integrating that into the blockchain. And it is an amazing, there's amazing opportunities in technology, and this is coming from him, not me, from behind the scenes, from what we've been talking about and, working on, hint, hint. But, yeah, I find the whole thing absolutely fascinating, and there's clearly, for Epic to pour this much money into it, it's fascinating.
What's so crazy is, so speaking of Unreal Engine, like I'm a huge fan also of Matrix, right? That's one of my favorite movies of all time. I was so geeked in the nostalgia of the new Matrix coming out. So I was in Mexico at the time. I ran to the first showing I could go and see the new Matrix movie. Spoiler alert, it wasn't the best movie in the world, but there was so much hype that there's one platform called Nifty's, the NFT platform, where I even went out and I bought some Matrix NFTs. Like everybody, like I was so excited about it. And what was also interesting is that around the same time, if you remember, the Unreal Engine partnership they did, where they basically had a Matrix video game that you could play to show the power of the Unreal Engine, right? So I was playing with my friend. He was like, "You got to come over. You got to play it." Like it was a great universe that they built, or kind of ecosystem they built, where like reminds me a lot of GTA, of you being in the world, a virtual world. And I think they were trying to show what is possible in a metaverse that meets kind of like I don't know, like a GTA or something else, where they were like, we have the capabilities to build it. And I mean, I'm thinking of things like you could have in this metaverse that they built out, you could have your own little shop there. Or my friend was telling me, like, look at these billboards. Like people could buy billboards and advertisements there. Like, there's so many applications of what I think could happen to where we're not even there yet. Like fundamentally, we know that we can build things. I think the metaverse and people's online personas and the virtual world being as important as the real world, I think that's coming and happening already. But it's just interesting to see, like, no one really knows what it is yet or where it's going, but to see that much money poured into a big player like Epic, who does a good job of having at least the tech to support it. I mean, I think there's a lot of room for growth there.
No, interesting. So, what do you think of, like, video games and blockchains? Like, obviously, we're talking about metaverse, which is essentially that, and a lot more. What do you think of the integration between the two, and like how it's going to affect long term?
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about blockchains in video games, or NFTs, et cetera. It's like, the game Animal Crossing. I know it's a really popular one. Right. So like, what is the whole point of Animal Crossing? To make money in the game, go deck out your little virtual house, where it's like you got a little couch, you change the color of your base, you have a picture, right? Like things that in the game are fun and gamified. But imagine that in the metaverse, where it's more widespread. And now, hey, cool, I have my virtual NFT that I can hang on my metaverse type. Like there's so many applications, I think, where NFTs, like integrated within the metaverse, that's a place that they could live and be like, cool, I have a Ferrari, but in real life, but in the metaverse, I have this Ferrari, and like, which one is worth more, in the real world. So I think there's like, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that I think can happen, and the technology is there and getting there. It's just fundamentally, are people ready for that yet?
Oh my God, I totally agree. Especially being a blockchain nut myself, like you and the devs on this project. But Diabolus working in Unreal Engine, I've seen the capabilities and what, of course, he's shown me and what he's working on private projects with and exploring with Devil. The technology using like with Unreal is incredible. It is absolutely mind-boggling and it is so revolutionary. And Unreal Engine 5 just came out, and if anyone's curious about Unreal Engine from a stock point of view, look up the stock Tencent. Tencent is a publicly traded stock, and they own, I think, about 40% of Unreal Engine. They also own WeChat and all these other companies. It's a Chinese company on the stock market. If not endorsing it, I'm telling you to buy it, of course, but just do your own research.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I know one other thing we were going to talk about today too is going back into kind of like the finance world is JP Morgan Chase. They dropped 42% in their quarterly profits as the pandemic, ended. And it said it's the first quarter where profits dropped by 42% from last year, partly because the bank, I know they had to write down nearly $1.5 billion in assets due to inflation, due to the war, with Russia in Ukraine. But there's a lot, it seems like, that's going on there where like that's a huge financial institution and those are huge losses. So I'm curious what you think about that.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up and how it ties to crypto specifically is Chase has a really bad reputation with crypto, and they've been known to block card purchases for people, like even using centralized exchanges like crypto.com. I've even had trouble doing that sometimes. And I've had friends who have Chase who have done the same thing, um, where you just they won't even let you buy crypto on a centralized exchange. And of course, I'm just curious on how much this drop, this 42% drop is in effect because of crypto. Now, I'm not saying that in any way it's massively effective at all. This is essentially other financial issues, but I'm curious, like, if you have customers and consumers that are like big crypto nuts, you're not necessarily going to want to keep doing business with the bank that's blocking your transactions in crypto. And I'm not trying to like, be all like negative toward Chase or anything. I'm just bringing up their point and their philosophy. And they're certainly not the only bank that's anti crypto. But um, I'm curious what you think on if this you think this had even a very small effect on their numbers, their quarterly numbers coming in since the pandemic. I mean, this could be a big load of issues like with a struggling economy right now and inflation, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much of that 42% or so we could attribute strictly to crypto. If it's 2%, if it's 40%, like I don't really know. It's interesting their policy and how strong of a stance they're taking when just about everyone else is adopting it or at least being open-minded to it. Um, at the same time, I'd be very curious to see if there's any other financial institutions. I don't know, Wells Fargo, Citibank, the other major players out there, if they've seen similar losses or decreases in profit and what their policies are. So in comparison, I'd love to see something like that. But I don't know. I just don't understand where, sure, it's one thing to say we're not going to advocate for crypto. We're not going to tell you to go out and start accounts and do this and that. We're not necessarily going to maybe integrate like a Venmo does or a Cash App, whatever. But to be so against it, where you're not letting people to, have accounts or sign up, things like that, it just seems like too strong of a stance. Where I think at a certain point, whether it's now or in the near future, they're going to isolate themselves a little bit, and they have to, I think, really just catch up with the times.
Absolutely. And what's crazy about this whole thing, I find, is the fact that we literally just talked about Sony investing $1 billion into Epic Games' metaverse and like trying to build their own metaverse. And that's NFTs, like that's still blockchain, and that's like I just find it really funny that there's this stigma against crypto still among so many financial institutions and companies, but for some reason when it comes to NFTs, everything is all fine and dandy. And I love both, obviously. I see potential in both, but I just find that really interesting, that whole stigma. Okay, the coin of the week I want to talk about is actually one who I have a personal connection with. They're friends of our project, and that's Nigel's. It's a BSC token, and one of the reasons I wanted to cover this token is these guys have a great story. So this is going to be the token we're covering for the week. As always, do your own research. This isn't financial advice. I'm not telling you to buy this token. I'm telling you to do your own research and check the project out. This is just who we happen to be highlighting, but. Their origin story is great and their name is funny, sort of like ours, right? Devil has a philosophy behind the name, but it's also quite humorous. Nigel's is actually similar in that aspect. And they came up with the name because what happened was there was this project, I forget the name of it, we were told by them, but they got rugged by a guy who went by the name Nigel. And, you know, it's horrible. Rugs are so common and so terrible. But they made a positive light out of this. And 10 of these strangers that all collectively got rugged by Nigel came together and decided to make a token and name it after the guy who rugged them. And they have this philosophy, according to them, that they want to be obviously an honest crypto project that makes people lots of money, like most honest crypto projects, but they want to cover, highlight, and talk about and chat with other crypto tokens. And they have a podcast that's amazing called Radio Nigel. And we were a guest on Radio Nigel. The Devil team was. So I will link that in the description below if for anyone listening who wants to check that out. It was one of the best AMAs we've ever done. They asked such good questions. They're so fun to talk to. But yeah, 10 guys all got rugged. And yeah, I just love the origin story that they came together with this.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I was reading over the white paper, and you're right. It's like it says a collective of 10 crypto enthusiastic friends who ended up getting rug pulled by that Nigel scammer guy. And they really are making lemonade out of lemons. I love it. I mean, not only are they they came together because of that, and they're collectively pulling their resources and their knowledge to do something right. And then they're also helping. I know in our last episode we were talking about how not to get scammed, and it seems like this is a project where they also want to share that mission of how to protect people, how to make a safe space in the crypto world. And again, like taking a bad situation, but turning it into a pretty cool project. I love it. And, wherever Nigel's at, scumbag for sure, but, really funny. I wonder what he thinks of the project if he knows about it. I think that wraps up the episode for today and everything we're going to talk about. Like always, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for any comments you drop below. Thanks for being a part of the community. And Old Scratch, you have anything to close out with?
Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our Devil Crypto channel, and hit the notification bell for more videos like this.
Cool. All right. See you guys next week.